I am Technical Sergeant Sarah Bruce, the instructor for Flight 2. And today I have the distinct honor of introducing today's guest speaker, SEAC number 3, Army Command Sergeant Major, retired John Wayne Troxell. Command Sergeant Major Troxell served as the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Senior Non-Commissioned Officer in the U.S. Armed Forces from December 2015 until his retirement in December 2019. In his role, he served as the Principal Military Advisor to the Chairman and the Secretary of Defense on matters involving joint and combined total force integration, utilization, the health of the force, and joint development for enlisted personnel. Today, SEAC Troxell will be talking to you about the importance of personal health. And as a reminder, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. And when called upon, render a proper greeting before asking your question. SEAC Troxell, sir, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. And to all of you phenomenal non-commissioned officers out there, thank you for your service to our country. And as a veteran and a retiree now, thank you for defending my freedom and way of life, as well as that of over 300 million other Americans. It's truly an honor for me to be here today. The gist of this conversation is going to be about personal health, but I'm going to kind of get to the left of that and why. Why do you need to be at peak operating efficiency with your health, your fitness, and all around preparedness to be prepared for what could be the worst day of your life, whether that's in a combat kind of environment or in everyday life, and why the foundation of being mentally and emotionally prepared and to get better at being technically and tactically prepared, that foundation has to be the physical part, which is your health and your fitness. So I want to kind of give you the one over the operational environment. I'm sure most of you know what the world is like that we're living in. But, you know, I first joined the military in 1982, excuse me, and I served 1 month shy of 38 years. And I will tell you that the last 4 years as the SEAC, but certainly the last 2 years, has been the most contentious operating environment that I've ever seen the United States military in. And when you look at the environment we're in right now, where so much we're not concerned with going to war against a near peer kind of threat. Obviously, we are training to be prepared for that, but our expectation is we're in a period in an era of this long-term power competition with countries like China and Russia. And they are the two existential threats to the United States of America, meaning either one of those countries has the ability to make the United States no longer exist. That's the bad news. The good news is the United States has the ability to do the same to either of those two countries. So hence where we're at in this long-term power competition. So we are looking to do things below the threshold of conflict that will impose costs on both of those countries and will deter their malign, aggressive efforts around the world. The Chinese are trying to execute this One Belt, One Road initiative with Chinese influence all the way around the world. Russian adventurism is all over Europe. It's in South America and it's in Africa now. And about a month before I retired as the SEAC, I sat in an intel brief and we got a report that there was a Russian strategic action group, about 4 ships that were tooling out in the Gulf of Mexico, right off outside of US waters. This is almost like Bay of Pigs stuff from 1962 with this Russian adventurism. So you look at that, and then you look at the two main threats that could cause us to go to war in the near future, being Iran and North Korea. And if you've served on the Korean Peninsula, you know that there is not peace there. We've been at a ceasefire since 1953. There's been some aggressive moves by the North Koreans, some aggressive reactions by the South Koreans, and all along the way, we, the Americans, have been there to try and maintain armistice conditions. But let there be no doubt that if we have to fight in the Korean Peninsula, it's going to be a very bloody and brutal conflict. And then with Iran, where do I start with them? The number one state sponsor of terrorism around the world, their use of proxy forces to do the nation's bidding in places like Syria, Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, and then through the waterways all around there, from the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, all the way through the Arabian Gulf, up into the Persian Gulf. Their malign activities have been, very present here in open source media. And then what they're doing by hijacking merchant vessels shows that they are a viable threat now. And then the generational threat of terrorism has not gone away. If terrorists are terrified of anything that I've seen, it's the coronavirus. So their threat may be a nascent threat right now because of the coronavirus, but let there be no doubt that people like ISIS and Al Qaeda and all other terrorist organizations are still looking to recruit, to train people to plan, prepare, and execute terrorist operations, not only in places like Europe, in Africa, but they want to get to North America again and do it in places like Canada, but ultimately the United States of America. So those are the main threats to us right now. And then when you throw in the coronavirus that I already talked about, as well as some internal kind of challenges that we had with getting after racial equality and things like that, it now more than ever is when we need engaged leadership throughout the ranks. And from the minute you pin on staff sergeant or tech sergeant or whatever rank, and you're given that rank and that title of a non-commissioned officer, a leader of men and women, now more than ever, we need you to be inspirational. We need you to be providing purpose, motivation, direction to every man and woman that you are responsible for out there. And the bottom line, we need you to be the example for everything that's right about our military and everything that's right about being a United States, an American. And so the bottom line is you as a leader have to make sure that every day you take the opportunity to build on the team that you have, but build on not only your own abilities and things like that, but also that of the men and women. And I kind of boil it down into four things that each of you should be focused on. That's lethality, readiness, cohesion, and fitness. And I'm going to leave fitness for last because the topic of this conversation is kind of being healthy and having this fit way of life as a member of this warrior class. And let there be no doubt, I don't care what you do in the Air Force or whether you're active, guard, reserve, or whatever you are, whatever service anybody serves in, you are a member of our nation's warrior class. You swear an oath when you join up, the men and women below you swear an oath that they will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies. And that means that comes with a certain amount of responsibility. And whether you're in a combat support, combat service support role, or in an administrative role, you still are a member of this warrior class, because in the end, the enemy will always get a vote on how they do business. And sometimes the battlefield is not contiguous, meaning a front line, a back line, or a rear area, and things like that. And certainly against a near peer kind of threat, and in a North Korea kind of scenario or Iranian planes kind of scenario, certainly everybody out there will be vulnerable to any kind of malicious activity or enemy attack if we have to do those operations. So lethality means that first and foremost, you have to be well prepared and proficient in your skills as an airman first. Long before whatever your AFSC is, you've got to be proficient in not only being able to defend yourself, but defending the men and women that you're responsible for and those on your left and right, and being able to repel any kind of attack. That means if you do weapons marksmanship, you got to take that very seriously. And it's not out there just to, hey, let me go out here and get through this task and everything. That's a kind of task that could save your life one day. and the men and women around you. So you got to take that kind of stuff seriously. Battle drills like first aid and how to defend yourself, where are the shelters if you come under attack when you're deployed and things like that. Those are things that you have to know right up front. Because in the end, when people start dying, nobody will really care what kind of skill you had as a human resource person or as a defender or whatever it is. Did you have the ability to defeat a threat that came to you and the service members around you? So that's gotta be foremost in your mind. And I know that's tough when you may not get all of the requisite training that you think you need. But every time you get these opportunities, you got to maximize them. I mean, you got a reinforcement to the men and women that you're responsible for. And then readiness. You got to be ready at all times to deploy. And that may seem simple enough, but when I was the SEAC, I was sitting around having a conversation with the then Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Kay Wright. And we were having a cup of coffee and talking about the deployability of our force. And one of the things he brought up to me, 14,000 of our airmen in the United States Air Force right now cannot deploy because they haven't been to the dentist or they haven't had their annual physical. Some of the routine things we do in the military to make sure we're ready were atrophied because, and frankly, it was because leaders weren't keeping their eye on this. Whatever your span of control is, however many people you're responsible for, and certainly you're responsible for yourself, you got to make sure that hey, when do my folks have to get to the dentist? When do they have to have their annual physical? And any of these other things that are critical elements of being deployable and ready to go and fight. Now, let me give you a statistic that is even more glaring, is when Kim Jong-un started, practicing trying to develop a nuclear weapon, and he started firing rockets and missiles over the mainland of Japan into the Sea of Japan. And this was, if you remember, President Trump gave his Fire and Fury speech. And at the time, it was Secretary Jim Mattis was the SecDef, and General Dunford was my immediate boss, the chairman. And Mattis wanted to know what the deployability and readiness of the force was. At that time, we had about 3 million active Guard and Reserve troops in all of the services, including the Coast Guard. And 17% of that 3 million were non-deployable. And I'm not going to ask you to do math here, but 3 million times 17%, that's over 500,000 troops across all the services could not deploy to do their job. And out of that 500,000, 100,000 of them were diagnosed as clinically obese, meaning they were so obese that they required health care to treat their obesity. And that health care bill for just those 100,000 troops was $5 billion a year. So when you talk about being a part of the greatest military that is going to be ready to fight and defend our freedom at all time, we cannot have 500,000 troops that cannot get to the fight. Because if we have to fight in North Korea, the numbers are kind of classified, but it's taken almost all, if not 3/4 of the fighter and bomber squadrons of the Air Force to participate in that operation. And the same thing with Army brigade combat teams and Marine regimental combat teams, as well as Navy carrier strike groups and expeditionary strike groups. So the bottom line is, as Secretary Mattis back then, we need all hands on deck at all times, ready to get after the fight. And so being ready at all times is important. And I will tell you, out of those 100,000 troops, and after we found out this number, is when Secretary Mattis put out a letter that you had a year to get deployable, or you were going to be processed for separation from the military. That was not an attempt to throw people out of the military. That was an aggressive move to get our force ready, which it should be. The American people expect us to be ready to fight and defend, to fight and win and defend freedom on any given day. And we can't have 17% of the force that can't deploy. And when you look at those 100,000 people that are diagnosed as clinically obese, obviously some of them had medical conditions, but I can tell you this, every one of those men and women joined the military, graduated from a recruit training or an A school or something, and they met service standards. So along the way, they were allowed to fall into this kind of level of mediocrity that caused them to have these health issues. And then when I talk cohesion, probably the most important thing you as a leader have to do. Cohesion can only come through empathy from the leader and understanding, and a leader trying to learn and understand who his people are or her people are, where they come from, what is the culture of their upbringing and everything, and what do they bring to the table. I will tell you that we've got challenges in our nation right now in terms of racism and inequality and things like that. But the closest thing, the closest institution to what right should look like in the United States of America is the United States military. Now, we're not perfect, and we've got some work to do to level the playing field and end racism and misogynism and some other things that exist in the military, but we are the closest thing to what right looks like. And so we have to embrace that as the military. And I will tell you, when I see some of the things that have happened in our military in terms of racial activity and misogynist activity, meaning, this is a male-dominated environment, women have no place and things like that, or the simple attacks on people that, are of the LGBTQ community or whatever, or their religion or whatever. I will tell you this, and this is the bottom line when it comes to all of this stuff. The worst day of my military career was on the 19th of July, 2007. I was a Stryker Brigade Command Sergeant Major. I was Surge Brigade number 4 in Iraq of President Bush's 5 Brigade Surge. And I was out on patrol that day, and I was hit by an Iranian weapon, an explosive form penetrator. It killed my radio operator, severely wounded my fire support NCO. He's in a wheelchair to this day, and about 6 or 7 other troops were wounded. And as we were pinned down in this ambush, and I was calling in for the quick reaction force to come get us, I could care less what race, what gender, what religion, what sexual orientation anybody was on the other line. The bottom line, there was an American voice on the other line, and they said, "Sergeant Major, we're coming in to get you." And that's all I needed to hear. And I could care less any of that other stuff. I just knew that a fellow teammate and teammates were going to come out and save us. And so your responsibility as a leader to build cohesion is paramount to making sure we have combat ready, deployable, and lethal organizations. We can do all the lethal stuff we want in the world. We can get after the readiness stuff, but if we haven't built a cohesive unit, we will be giving up a competitive advantage to whatever threat we're going against. And so that's what you got to focus on through your leadership style and how you get after business. And remember this, leadership is an art. It's not a science. So your ability to inspire, to provide purpose, motivation, and direction is key to building that cohesion. And the last thing, this is all about health and everything, and I've kind of talked through some things, but I will tell you, the most important thing and the foundation for everything we do is our physical fitness. And I'm not just talking about passing a physical fitness test or anything like that. I'm talking about having the requisite physical, mental, and emotional endurance to not only get through a deployment, but as I talked about right off the bat, if we have to go to war with a China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran, it is going to be brutal, it's going to be drawn out, and it's going to be long. And we got to make sure that physically, mentally, and emotionally, we're ready for that. So how do you get there? I will tell you, and as I'm out here in corporate America right now, and I talk about some of the things that we do in the military, it almost baffles them that I tell us every day for an hour and a half, we get paid to go out and work on our fitness level, meaning to build not only our team, but ourselves more physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared. And sometimes we take that for granted. But I will tell you, you want to build cohesion and you want to get after the root of having a healthy and fit force, every day, that hour and a half that you put in the work of sharing in the hardship of doing a hard fitness session will go a long way with building cohesion, but more importantly, building the fitness and health that we need to be prepared for the worst day of our life. The other thing is, it's not just training. It's we as non-commissioned officers, you as non-commissioned officers, you have to educate yourself on how to do correct preparation for physical training, correct training, and then correct recovery. But most importantly, how you're fueling our bodies, how we are fueling our bodies. And I will tell you, I go into some of the dining facilities and stuff, and I see people lined up at the short order line, where it's burgers, fries, and apple pies, and then you got the half circle of cakes and stuff out there, and people are lined up for that. And then you go over and to the little section where it's healthy food and there's salads and everything, and you never have to wait in line for stuff like that. I will tell you, over the long haul, the better we eat, and we take that 80% of our health has to be what we're eating and what we're putting in our body. Because you cannot out-train a bad diet. And over the long haul, that bad diet will lead to some health issues if you decide to make this a career. So the bottom line is, you got to get after your health every day, but more importantly, you got to educate the men and women that are coming in that they got to get after their health every day. Now, hey, don't get me wrong. Nobody likes a double cheeseburger from Five Guys or a 32-ounce Miller Lite better than me, okay? But in moderation, all right? And that should not be the standard. Should be something I do every now and then. Trust me, if I'm going to meet my maker tomorrow, the last thing I want to have in my gut, is a bland chicken Caesar salad, okay? I'd much rather have a 20-piece bucket from Popeyes or something like that. But I don't plan on going tomorrow, and I'm trying to live forever, all right? So even though I'm 56 years old, I still train like I'm on active duty. I still eat as clean as I can, and to make sure that I can continue to get after that. And so you got to keep that in consideration, as you continue to build your team, but most importantly, as you build the health and fitness you need over a career in the United States military. So, Sergeant Moreno, I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and I am more than happy to answer any questions. I know we got about 25 minutes left, so nothing is off the table. I'm willing to talk about anything here.
Yes, sir. The first question we have comes from Sergeant Gonzalez.
Hello, sir. Just want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much for your dedicated 38 years of service to our great nation. My question is quick and simple, and you answered most of it on that last excerpt. But my question is, do you feel that physical fitness directly contributes to mental fitness?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things I'm focusing on, Tech Sergeant Gonzalez, and I appreciate your question. One of the things I'm focusing on now is I work a lot with like the Emory Hospital in Atlanta. I'm part of their Emory Healthcare Veterans Advisory Board. And I also work with FitOps Foundation that gets after developing certified veteran fitness operatives. But one of the things science is telling us is that a key component of mental and emotional health and strength is the physical part. And the more physically fit we are, the more mental and emotional fit we will be. And just think of this, and I've seen it over a career of 38 years. Whenever something bad was going on and it was starting to, I was starting to get upset about something, the more physically fit I was, the more I was able to handle those kind of stressors. So I absolutely believe, and science will tell us, that the best link to mental and emotional health is the physical part. And I'll leave you with this on that question. Every day now that I have more time on my hand, I never do not answer the phone when people call me. Sometimes it's at 2 o'clock in the morning and it's a veteran that was an 18-year-old private when we were in Iraq together in 2007. And now they're in their mid-30s. They're having challenges with family. They're having challenges with finances and with alcohol abuse, and they have firearms. And every one of these people that I have to deal with, the first thing they let go was their physical health. And every one of these people, and there's about a dozen of them now that I'm working with, to get them back, I call it Get With the Movement now, as a part of my PME Hard campaign, is to get them back on that road of physical health. Because the minute their physical health went, the mental and emotional health started going down. And then if you compound it with relationships and financial problems, you know, they're self-medicating with the medications they get from the VA, and they're abusing alcohol, and they got firearms in their home. And I will tell you, I'm not afraid to say it. One of these guys called me at 2 o'clock in the morning, FaceTime me, and he had a pistol in his mouth. And, you know, and that was a pretty dramatic night for me as I look to get his family involved. The bottom line, though, is we got the guy the help he needs, and he's getting back on the road to recovery. Why? Because he's focusing on his fitness. So I absolutely believe, and there's nobody in the world can convince me otherwise, that we can get after mental and emotional health without a physical foundation. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, our next question is going to be from Tech Sergeant Scarset.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Scarset from the 70th ISR Wing, Fort Meade, Flight 8. Good afternoon, SEAC Troxell. So I was wondering, regarding your comments for being non-deployable, do you believe those that have become non-deployable due to health problems gained through the military, either whether physical injuries or mental health, do you think they should still be actually separated, even though they may be able to still perform their duties in their home station?
You know, this is a, Tech Sergeant, this is a great question here. And, you know, in the military, we're brought up as a leader to have empathy, and we have to have empathy, you know, but, you know, we are a world-class organization. And when you look at world-class organizations in professional sports like the NFL, the NBA, the WNBA, or any of these other organizations. I was just on a podcast the other day with the Seattle Seahawks general manager, John Schneider, and we had this conversation. You know, business is business, and we can't make it personal. My point is this, as much as we may want to keep somebody on our team because they're a great person and we want to show that we care about them, if they can't deploy to do the job that they swore an oath to do, and we haven't given them ample time to get deployable, then we have to, at a certain point, we've got to say, look, thank you for your service, and we'll have you continue your medical approach through the VA system. The bottom line is, you know, the Los Angeles Lakers won the NBA championship. They had 12 men on their team. I will submit to you that those same 12 men will probably not be on that roster next year for whatever reason. You know, some may go through free agency to go somewhere else. Some may not just make the cut next year. That number 11 or 12 man on the bench may not be there next year. They may go somewhere else. The bottom line is, it's not because they're not a talented individual and they're not a good person. It's just what is best for the organization. And so when we look at being prepared and having that high level of preparedness for a near peer kind of fight, we really got to make hard decisions on who we keep and who we don't keep. That's got to be a case by case basis. We can't just do a blanket, hey, we're getting rid of all of you, you know, but we got to look at it hard. I will tell you, I was at U.S. Forces Korea as the command senior enlisted leader, and before that at U.S. Army First Corps. And there were some people that we had on our rolls that for 4 years had been on a temporary limiting profile that would not allow them to deploy. And think of what that means if they're in a unique specialty, that if they can't go, somebody is going to go. And if it's in a unique specialty, and we've seen this happen, all of a sudden you got people going 4 months in, 4 months out, or 6 months in, 6 months out, and they're doing that over 4 years because this other person could not deploy to do that. At a certain point, strategically and at the DOD level and the service level, we got to look at this and say, when is enough enough, you know? And that's not trying to be callous or non-empathetic. It's about making sure that we have the force necessary to fight and win when we have to. And that's why, again, I go back to leadership is an art and it's not a science. If it was a science, there wouldn't be any empathy, there wouldn't be any cohesion, there wouldn't be anything. So the leader is the one that through the art of influence has to make those hard decisions on whether to keep people or not keep them. The bottom line is the leader ought to be influencing people to get deployable and want to move out and get after the mission. But in the end, if we've exhausted all resources on that service member, sometimes we just got to say thank you for your service, and we'll let you carry on with the VA after. That's a hard question. Thank you for bringing it up, though.
Our next question comes from Sergeant Quincy.
Command Sergeant Major Troxell, SEAC number 3. I'm Sergeant Quincy from the Flight 3 Predators, 345th Recruiting Squadron. Good afternoon, sir. The disruptions that COVID is forcing us to all live in different ways right now. So my question is, if you have observed any type of impact that social media or social networking has had on unit commission or cohesion.
Yeah. Hey, great question. So I'm going to answer your question in a second, Tech Sergeant, but I got to say this right up front. And I was going to wait to the end to say this, but I've talked about challenges we may have and everything, and I've talked about the threats, but I know one thing for sure is that we, the United States military, has warfighting advantages, competitive warfighting advantages in every warfighting domain: air, ground, sea, space, nuclear, and cyber. But the greatest advantage we have is in the human domain, in what we do to train, educate, empower, trust non-commissioned officers and petty officers. And every one of you, your questions here today are indicative of why you all are our greatest competitive advantage. Because if I was having this conversation 20 years ago, you would have been asking me, hey, can you help us out with our chow hall here on Sheppard Air Force Base? Or, hey, Popeyes is charging too much on base than it is off base. But your questions are of operational and strategic nature. And again, I beam when I see things like this, because that just reinforces to me that you all are our greatest competitive advantage. So having said all that, Tech Sergeant Quinte, can you repeat the question again now, sir?
Roger that. The disruptions of COVID-19 has kind of forced us
Yeah.
all to adjust the way we live and work. And I was wondering if you had any insight on the impact, if any, social networking, Web 2.0, or social media has made on unit cohesion.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I will tell you that, number one, we as non-commissioned officers, you have to deal in facts and know exactly what's going on. And you have a responsibility to ask your superiors, hey, I need to know what's going on, especially when it comes to this coronavirus. Because I will tell you, on social media, you will see all kinds of stuff about the coronavirus and what it's doing and everything. And I look at this as a threat, much like terrorism is. We know it's out there. We can't see it. We know it's out there. And sometimes we don't see it until it hits us. So we have to use social media wisely throughout this period, but also make sure we're executing prudent risk in everything we do. We follow the rules. Like some people will tell me, you're retired now. What are you wearing a mask in the airport for? I said, because they told me I have to. And if I want to get on a plane, I got to have a mask on. And if I don't, yeah, I might look like, excuse my language, Johnny Badass, because I stood up to some airline about wearing a mask. But guess what? I ain't on that plane going to where I need to go. So the bottom line, and I hope this is getting after your question here. Social media is a great tool to stay connected. And I think through things like COVID, it's a great way to stay connected. But it's also a source of disinformation. And, state actors and non-state actors are on social media, bots and trolls, trying to send messages that seem like they might be real, but in reality, they're false. So the bottom line is, as leaders, you just got to continue to cut through all of that stuff. And if it doesn't smell right, then you shouldn't be forwarding that on or, leading others to believe that it's correct. Your job is to confirm or deny rumors. And there's a lot of rumor and rhetoric on social media, especially when it comes to the coronavirus. I know this, I haven't stopped traveling. I was at Schriever and Peterson Air Force Base last week. I've been to Keesler Air Force Base. I've been to Goodfellow Air Force Base. I'm constantly traveling, but I follow the protocols that come down. You know, I wear a mask, I wash my hands, I social distance, all those things. And I am very careful with what I do with social media to make sure that I'm not portraying a message that says that, you know, what we're doing is wrong, or that I'm buying into some BS story that some bot or troll from a foreign state actor may have put on there. I hope that was kind of gets after your answer your question. All right, thank you.
Next one's going to be from Tech Sergeant Weller.
Hello, sir. Tech Sergeant Weller, 57 Muns, Nellis Air Force Base, Flight 19. So I definitely agree with you on all your points you made. I'm very much there with you. So my question is, do you believe that our current military health system in place could be part of the problem of having a non-deployable force? For example, we have.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, sir. So like, for example, it's way too easy, I feel like, in the Air Force for airmen to have their PT test come up and get put on a waiver and not have to actually follow through with the physical therapy that's involved. Or myself personally, I've been through physical therapy. There's actually no accountability on it being accomplished. And then my secondary question to you, I think it was Sergeant Chardonnay had said upon, do you think our VA is actually currently able to help all the people if they were have to get out of the military and actually be able to help them with their issues? Or do you think it's already swamped as it is and it won't be able to handle the surplus?
Yeah, great questions. So question number one, yes. To tell you the truth, one of the things that I fought for as the SEAC was Defense Health Agency is the senior health organization in the Department of Defense. They're a direct reporting unit to the Secretary of Defense. And just recently, about 2 years ago, all of the service medical commands fell up under. So Army Medical Command, BUMED, Air Force Medicine, all fell up under Defense Health Agency, excuse me, to try to build more synchronization in our healthcare for our troops. And also that we had one overhead that overlooked all of medicine underneath the Secretary of Defense. But there's still a disconnect between the operational command, the medical care, and, you know, I'll throw the VA in there too, or the community and the VA. But specifically for your first question, here I'll give you an example. You know, A1C Troxell has a fitness test coming up. A1C Troxell goes to the medical treatment facility because of HIPAA and everything. And I'm not here trying to criticize HIPAA. All right, don't let me walk away thinking that that's what I'm against. But anyways, goes in, says my back hurts or whatever. Doctor looks him over, you know, and with back injuries, you know, even the best healthcare professionals are making their best assessment. It's not actual fact because of the back. But, you know, A1C Troxell, oh, my back hurts. You know, doctor gives them a waiver on the test, gives them a physical limiting profile. They come back, they report back to Sergeant Weller. A1C Troxell says, hey, Sergeant Weller, sorry, I can't take that fitness test. And oh, by the way, that deployment we got coming up to Udari, I can't go either, okay? Your next leader, the officer in charge or anything, there's very little communication with that healthcare professional. And we're not trying to violate HIPAA, but if you're the responsible for the care and feeding of A1C Troxell, there ought to be a dialogue between the medical people that are treating them and you. And right now it exists in some aspects of our military, but for a good portion of it, the communication is not there. And we've got to get better at that. Second part of your question, hey, I know this, and I was having a conversation with Sergeant Mims, Sergeant Marino, before we all went on air here. You know, the next time I talk, I want to talk transition. I know we're short on time here, but the key thing is if you spend 60 days on active duty, whether that's in recruit training or boot camp or whatever it is, you're authorized to use the VA health system, whether that's the VA healthcare or VA home loan or whatever it is. You're authorized to use it. You don't have to be a retiree. You don't have to get through your first term of enlistment. The bottom line is, though, in order for the VA to work best, we've got to take care of the VA compensation process and all of that stuff while you're still in uniform. Even if we are telling someone we have to separate you. And what does that mean? 180 days out, they've got to have a separation health physical examination. Right after that, we got to link them up with a veteran support organization like the DAV, the VFW, or somebody that will do their compensation claim for free and submit that. And then we have to make sure that they get to their VA appointments after that. One of the things that is a challenge is when someone says, I'm going to transition, all of a sudden they might be put in a different kind of category for those that are still preparing for the next mission. And we can't, if we're saying airman for life, we can't forget about that. And so the bottom line of my point is, if you don't get this stuff done while you're still on active duty, then when you separate, you're alone with the other 350,000 veterans right now that are looking to get VA compensation benefits or get through their VA home loan process or whatever it is. So if the bottom line is, if we have to separate and we continue to separate more troops, yeah, they're just going to fall in line with that 350K that are out there already that are struggling to get benefits, and it's taken them, years to get it done. But, the alternative is we keep them on active duty, and, we have 17% of the force that can't deploy, and we are wasting taxpayers' dollars by doing things like that. So, I mean, again, that's why I go back to it's an art, and leaders have to figure this out at the tactical, operational, and strategic level as we move forward. I understand your frustration because that was one of the things I focused on. And then some of the healthcare, God bless our healthcare professionals, but sometimes they're risk averse, meaning Weller comes in for physical therapy. Well, I'm going to make you do the very minimum that you should be doing. Instead of saying, I need to get Sgt. Weller back to peak operating efficiency, and all right, it's time to put the work in here. And sometimes we don't do that. Again, I'm not passing judgment on our great medical professionals, but sometimes we can do a lot better. So I absolutely agree with you, man.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Our next question is going to come from Sergeant Howell.
It's Tech Sergeant Howell, 844th Communications Squadron in the Pentagon, part of Flight 21 pilots here. Good afternoon, SEAC. You speak on cohesion in the force. How do you feel the current administration is working to enhance cohesion among themselves, and that kind of, as that trickles down to the rest of the military? And also, what is the current number of entrenching tools you've signed?
First with the administration. So the administration has a council on diversity and inclusion in the nation. As a matter of fact, one of the leading individuals on it is a good friend of mine named Harrison Floyd, a former Marine, former professional mixed martial artist, and he's an African American gentleman. And then you have the Council for Health and Fitness that the president has, and retired Air Force Master Sergeant Rob Wilkins, a good friend of mine, is on that. Herschel Walker is somebody that's on that. Johnny Damon and other athletes there. So I think we set up the kind of stuff to get after cohesion at the administration. We certainly have it at the DOD, and the services have it. But in everything we do, the more it trickles down from the strategic to the operational to the tactical, it gets diluted, or somewhere along the line, there's a leader that just thinks it's BS and shuts it off. And then that's why we have the challenges we have at the level. At every leader, or at every level, every leader has to be all in on diversity, inclusion, cohesion, and ending the racism and misogynism that is in our force right now. I will tell you, I'm a pasty white guy from Iowa, and when I show up at places, especially with this beard and everything, sometimes people think they're in a comfortable place with me, and they will say something stupid as hell. And then I have to, unload a healthy dose of scunion on them about what it means to be a member of this warrior force that, racism has no place, misogynism has no place, being anti-Semitic and any of these other things, it has no place in our military. It can't be there. You know, we can't expect men and women to rely on each other and to potentially give their lives for one another when there's one of them may have problems with race or something like that. It cannot exist, because if it does exist and we end up on the Kaesong Heights in Korea, or we end up fighting Russia in Eastern Europe or something, it will rear its ugly head at the worst moment. And that we can't have that. So we just got to continue to get after this. The programs are in place all along from the strategic level all the way down. But if leaders don't buy into it at all levels, basically you guys are where the rubber meets the road. If it doesn't start where you're at and it doesn't meet in the middle from where it's coming down strategically, we'll never get after this like we should. And the second part of your question, as a matter of fact, I just got number 905 in the mail, entrenching tool, from a Navy Command Master Chief. I'll sign this and get him out to it today. So the entrenching tool, the e-tool nation continues to grow. And so, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
You got to tell your classmates the story on that, because I know I see Sergeant Bruce on there right now. She's about to yank me here. So, but pass that story on, because I will tell you, one of the things I didn't get to that ought to be a topic in one of your classes is professional jealousy, and how professional jealousy can be as bad in an organization as racism and misogyny and things like that. So, all right, Sergeant Bruce, Sergeant Marino, I'll turn it back over to you guys. I see you both popped up here. So you're kind of like those defenders at the front gate when I didn't have my driver's license. So you're going to escort me over to the side till I get it. So go ahead.
Sergeant Bruce, the floor is yours, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, SEAC Troxell, for your time and your perspective. At this time, class, please take a 15-minute break and then meet back into your large classrooms.
Good luck to you all. God bless you all. Thank you for what you do. And again, I love saying this now that I'm a civilian. Thank you for defending my and my family's freedom and that of 300 million other Americans. Keep up the fight. God bless you. Thanks.